everyone. Welcome to my podcast, The Listful Soul, a podcast on spiritual and self experience guidance from my soul to yours. My name is Lisa, and I will be your host, so welcome. The idea of this podcast is to share my experiences in life with you, with a spiritual aspect to it as well. I'm hoping to dwell into different topics over the course of this year, and I'm really looking forward to this journey along with you, with your continuous feedback and support. My first season will touch upon the devotion to Mary. So on today's episode, I'm going to dwell upon the title, Mary, Queen of Peace. Peace. That's definitely something all of us want in our lives. And according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, peace is defined as a state of tranquility, a freedom from oppressive thoughts or emotions, a harmony with personal relations. How many of us can honestly say that we are at peace with ourselves? We are at peace with what's going on in our lives. In 1917, Pope Benedict XV called the First World War as the suicide of Europe. And so he desired that the Catholics of the world would start praying through Mary's intercession as the Queen of Peace, so that the end of this world war would arrive. And it was then that Pope Benedict XV added the title Queen of Peace to the litany of Loreto. And so the peace of the world is a special theme at Fatima and then again at Maggiore, where we see that after Pope Benedict XV added this title, Our Lady appeared to those three children at Fatima 8 days later. And so the artwork that was then created to represent Mary, Queen of Peace, is such of her holding a dove and an olive branch, which are both symbols of peace. All through the past many years, there's been a lot of violence, there's been a lot of destruction, there's been a lot of unhappiness around the world, maybe even in our own families. And especially now, in our current situation with the pandemic, we all, some of us may also have, gone through personal losses. We may have lost, a father, a mother, a brother, a sister, a relative in this pandemic. And there's a lot of uncertainty. There is no peace in the world today. And so we need to start engaging in this battle of peace, in this battle for peace through prayer. And like I had mentioned in my first episode about how powerful prayer is, because prayer opens up your heart to not only building that deep relationship with God, but to also have an encounter with others by respecting them, by understanding them. And so prayer puts within us that conviction and that courage to really want to be peacemakers, to live by the beatitude of Jesus. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Peace is a very basic attribute of God. And it was through sin that the divine order of peace was disrupted when Adam and Eve disobeyed God. And the peace that was there when God first created man was disrupted. And soon after, the original sin, the story of Cain and Abel, where Cain killed Abel, brought violence into the world. But later on in the Old Testament, we read of a great promise of peace that was associated with the coming of the Messiah. When the prophecy of the coming of the Messiah of Jesus was given in Isaiah 9:6, Jesus is referred to as the Prince of Peace. So Jesus is our peace. And therefore he calls us to become peacemakers. So there's a very interesting verse, and it's in Matthew chapter 10, verses 39. It goes like this: if you cling to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find it. Let me read that again. If you cling on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find it. You know, that's a very simple yet very powerful verse. And in its simplicity, it says so much. If you cling to your life, you will lose it. How many of us are so taken by our lives, about our accomplishments, about our successes, about how others think about us? How many of us instead give up our lives for Jesus, give up our lives to Him, so that we may be those peacemakers that He calls us to be, that we may be the evangelists that He calls us to be, that we may be that brother or sister that He calls us to be to our brothers and sisters. Think about it. Where are you in your life? Are you clinging on to your life? Or are you willing to give it up for Him? Are you willing to surrender your life unto Him? To allow Him to lead you in accordance to His will? And I truly believe that when you come to that point, when you are ready to surrender, when you are ready to surrender to His will and allow Him to work through you, that is where you will find that peace. And one of the quickest ways and one of the easiest ways to get to Jesus, to allow Him to give you that strength to be able to surrender to Him, to be able to give up your life to Him, is through His mother, is through our Queen of Peace. Some of us may be able to be very strong-willed with the strength of Jesus and be at peace with ourselves, with the world around us. But there are some others who do struggle with it, and that's okay. That's okay. There is hope. There is still hope for you. There is still hope to find Him through His mother. I struggled with being at peace with a lot of things when I was much younger. I was the kind of person who would worry about everything. You bring a situation in front of me, I will think of everything possible that may go wrong in order for me to, proceed with it. And that would be something that would eventually stop me from doing it. And because of that, I feel like I never got the opportunity to really experience life as I have been over the past couple of years. And that's okay. It may take you a while if you are someone who is struggling with surrendering to God. But don't give up. Never give up, because He never gave up on you. Think about your lives. Think about your own lives, where you are at this point of time. What are the areas in your life that you are struggling to surrender to Him, where you are struggling to find peace in your life? Peace of the heart puts away anxiety and fears aside. And who better to teach you how to be peaceful? Who better than our mother, the Queen of Peace, to show you what peace is? And peace in your life is nothing but surrendering to Him. Now, what is surrendering? Yeah, you may think that, that's a pretty big word. Surrendering is when you're able to not give up, but you're willing to give in. If I were to Google what the word surrender means, it would tell me that it is a point where I stop resisting to a situation. I stop resisting to an opponent, and I submit to their authority. And that is what surrendering is to stop resisting God and submit to His will, submit to what He is calling us to do. In my experience with working with a lot of people, some of it being helping people in through their lives, I've noticed that there are people who know what they're supposed to do. There are people who say that, yes, I'm struggling with this and I know that prayer is the answer. And then comes the big but. Surrendering is removing that big but and submitting to the will of God, submitting to the answer that will enable us to have that peace in our lives. I mean, how bad can it be? There's that beautiful verse in Romans 8:31 that says, if God is for us, who can ever be against us? And that is where we need to surrender to Him, where we need to put our hope and our trust in Him, that He is going to look after us. He is going to help us with all of the trials that we have in our lives. So you may be saying to yourselves, well, it's easy for you to say, surrender to God, but it's difficult. Well, yes, I would agree that it is difficult, but difficult only at first. Once you've entrusted God with the issues that you have at hand, with the problems that you may have, once you've surrendered it to Him and you've seen the fruit of that, then trust me, it will become easy. It's just that you have to take that first step in really entrusting Him with whatever it is that you're going through, in really surrendering to Him and allowing Him to play His will in your life. In my first episode, I spoke about, the first time when I encountered Mary. And that was when, my dad fell sick. So to add on a little bit into that story, we were about 2 days into, being in the hospital. And while we were in the general ward, we get a call on the phone in the room, and it was the finance people of the hospital, and they tell us, ma'am, can you come down to settle some of the bill? So at first I was like, okay, I thought to myself, this is just, the second day. Why are they, calling us? So anyhow, my brother and I, we went down to the accounts department, and that's when the guy said, we always prefer that payments are made in installments rather than at the end, at the time of discharge. So we said, okay. And, he prints out the bill and he hands it over to us. And I look at the bill and, my jaw dropped, because in just 2 days, it was about 1 lakh and I think 20,000 or so. And I think the guy, obviously read my expression and he was like, ma'am, don't worry. You pay as much as you can now. And then after 2 days again, you pay a certain amount. So I said, okay, fine. And between my brother and I, finances at that point of time were pretty tight. We were literally living on a month-on-month paycheck. And it just so happened that at just a few months prior to this incident, I was saving up for a trip to go abroad. And so I had a certain amount of, money that I had in my kitty. And so between my brother and I, all we could kind of cough up was just about 1 lakh. And so we put down about 70, I think, at that first point. And in that, I mean, I'll be honest, in that few minutes, I thought to myself, okay, if 2 days came to 1.2 lakhs, what's going to happen, the day that we actually leave the hospital? And, I started thinking to myself for those few minutes, like, okay, how are we going to pay this hospital bill? And I started, my mind started running around thinking, okay, maybe I'll just swipe my credit card and all of that. But then at that moment when I, started thinking like that, I actually stopped myself. And I said to myself, I'm not going to worry about this. I'm just going to leave it in God's hands. And I know that He's going to take care of us. And I left it. And I didn't think about it after that. And here's the beauty of it all. I think the next day, it was the next day, we get a call from my aunt who lives abroad, and she tells me that all of us have pooled in money and we're going to send it to you. And I can't tell you how amazing that feeling felt, to know that because I surrendered to God, I surrendered to His providence. He provided for us. He provided for us more than we required, more than we needed, And so it was through Him. It was through His through His will, through His desire, that He reached out to my relatives, who in turn, decided to do this for us and came back to us and said that, we want to help you. And this is how we're going to help you. And so to all those who are listening, this is where, I say, don't lose hope, but just keep your faith, keep your trust in God, and really surrender to Him whatever struggles you may be going through. Because it is only when you surrender to Him that you have that inner peace within yourself. And when you have that peace, that's what's going to help you make better decisions. That's what's going to help you to live your life to the fullest and live it to the extreme that God wants you to live your life. And in all of that, we come to Mama Mary. We intercede to her. We ask her to intercede for us to her Son. As we've said, Jesus was always obedient to his mother. And so if we intercede through Mary, she takes it up to her Son. He is not going to say no. He is not going to refuse his mother. And through Mary and the kind of person that we've seen Mary to be, obedient and surrendered her life to God, she trusted in him through everything that she went through. From the Annunciation to the day when she stood at the foot of the cross where her only son was hanged. Through that entire journey, she surrendered to God. She allowed him to do his will through her, and she was always at peace, even in that last moment. And so it is through her example of the display of peace, that we too should follow. We too should intercede to her. I'd like to end this episode with a prayer to the Queen of Peace. Mary, Mother of God and our Mother, Queen of Peace, you came to us to lead us to God. Obtain for us the grace not only to say, "Be it done to me according to your will," but to live it as you did. Into your hands we put our hands, so that you may lead us to him amidst these afflictions and woes. Amen. So thank you all for joining me on this episode of The Listful Soul, a devotion to Mary. If you enjoyed this podcast or wish to send along a question or even have a friendly critique, drop me an email at listfulsoulpodcast@gmail.com. The music in the introduction and the close of this podcast was composed by Garreth Demello. The artwork in my podcast logo and episode was designed by Anahita Ray and Michelle Fernandes, respectively. You can check them out on their social media handles mentioned below. Do spread the word of my podcast via your social media handles, and let's bring more souls closer to Him. See you on the next episode. Until then, stay blessed.